401k and Checkbook IRA Workshop. Thank you all for joining us today. As always, if you have any questions at all, we'll be more than happy to answer your questions. You can type them up in the live chat box that will be in your right hand side of the screen. And today we have a lot of new content for you guys, so we're excited to have you guys join us. Brad, anything that you'd like to say or add on before we begin?
Nope, I think I'm ready to begin when we all are.
All right. Then let's start. My name is Leah with Sense Financial, and we are a boutique financial firm specializing in self-directed retirement accounts with checkbook control. Our speaker for today is Brett Sininsky. I briefly want to introduce Brett. He is a sole 401k and SDRA consultant here at Sense Financial. He has a professional journey spanning over 18 years in real estate investing. Brett is also a licensed California real estate agent, and his passion lies in empowering people to attain financial independence, affording them the possibility of an early retirement. Thank you again for joining us today, Brett. It's always a pleasure to have you here, and I'll let you take it from here.
All right. Yes, thank you, Leah. I appreciate the kind words, and thank you everybody who's watching this and who's participating. We appreciate the opportunity, and we are going to talk about the 401k and the checkbook IRA and what that looks like. And I do want to make this workshop style in the sense that I'm going to be talking about real life scenarios and real life examples and individuals who have used self-directed retirement accounts at a high level, and some you'll be able to relate to, some you won't. You'll see what I mean by that in a few minutes. But we are going to talk about applicable scenarios that you can apply to your situation if you're already self-directing, or if you're not, that can get your mind grooving about what the possibilities are. And bear in mind that self-directing is really about investing what you know in what you know, understand, and therefore can control more, right? Maybe not 100% control, but a little more control. In some cases, a lot more control. Okay. So that's my info. This is educational only. And if you need legal advice or tax advice, seek out the proper professional. If you want to get a hold of me, my email's there, Brett at SenseFinancial.com, two T's, and 949-228-9340 is my number. But without further ado, let's get into this. Our mission is helping clients obtain control and protect their retirement accounts. Okay. Um, you work hard for your money, and we want to come alongside you and work hard in this capacity of providing a self-directed retirement account so that you can, like I said at the beginning, you can take control of it and therefore protect it. But it's not just about protection. Asset protection is important, of course. I'm talking also about investing wisely and aggressively, right? Two terms that don't always go hand in hand, okay? But with self-directing, they can. All right, I'm going to show some examples here shortly. Proverbs 21:5 says, good planning and hard work lead to prosperity. All right, so real quick, conventional versus self-directed. Conventional is what we all know, right? The stock market, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs. This is probably your 403b, your 401k, your TSP, largely in the stock market. Even your IRA, right? If you have an IRA at Fidelity, it's in the S&P 500, or it's in some other type of stock, bond, mutual fund, or ETF. All right. Now, that's the conventional side. Okay. You could do well at that, right? S&P is about 10% over the history of it. And so long term, that's what you're going to get. All right. There's all kinds of this along the way. But if you look at it in a big picture, it's about 10%. All right. Self-directed is kind of, the possibilities are endless. All right. You can see my pictures here, and I'm teasing about the conventional thing. It's not quite horse and buggy, but the self-directed side is not quite a flying truck, but it's close, because it can go where the horse and buggy can go, but it can also go a lot of other places. All right. And I'm going to talk about some examples, not just with individuals that are doing this, but just I'm going to talk about what you can invest in and what a lot of people are, and what the IRS says you can't. Okay, so we're going to talk about that as well. But what it allows you to do when you're, or to achieve when you're self-directing, is true diversification. Okay, most of our clients, this is not By the way, it would be impossible to exhaust the list of what is eligible to be invested in because the IRS doesn't actually tell you what you can invest in. They only tell you what you can't invest in. So most of our clients are investing in the following categories: real estate, residential, commercial, private lending, cryptocurrency, precious metals, silver, platinum, palladium, and silver of certain quality is allowed, and tax deeds, trust deeds. Those are some of the more common examples. Okay. There's other examples. You can invest in private equity in a private business, for example. SpaceX is not publicly traded, so we have clients investing using their self-directed plan into SpaceX private equity. Ecclesiastes 11:2 says, "Divide your portion to 7 or even to 8, for you do not know what misfortune may occur on the earth." All right, so here's one of the examples you're not going to be able to relate to. And Peter Thiel, okay, Peter Thiel obviously was one of the founders of PayPal, very, very wealthy man, probably worth like 30 billion with a B dollars at this point in time. And he early on figured out that he could use a self-directed IRA to invest in PayPal. And so that's what he did. Now, he started out with a very modest account. I'm not sure what it was, probably less than $100,000 initially. And it was a Roth IRA. And he turned it into over $5 billion. This is tax free money. It's absolutely mind blowing. Now, he did this years ago in the 90s. And since then, the IRS actually, because of him, took a really close look at how he invested and what he did, and prohibited transactions, disqualified parties, and such, which we're going to cover more of in a moment. But it was because of Peter Thiel that some of these rules were tightened up. He was obviously, in some ways, he was directly involved with PayPal, but he potentially had some insider knowledge that not other people didn't have, which allowed him to get in at a very low amount, and just his IRA ballooned because of that. So fast forward to today, 20, 30 years later, and his Roth IRA has over $5 billion in tax-free money. So you can imagine that's going to get the IRS's attention. For most of us, that doesn't apply. Okay. So that's one example of what you could do. Now, I just gave another one. We have clients with thousands of dollars, not millions or billions, investing in private equity like SpaceX. Okay, so you can duplicate what Peter Thiel did, maybe not identically, but you can invest in the same asset category. All right. Okay. Whoops. How did that happen? Sorry. I hit the wrong button. All right. So your basic options for self-directing is the self-directed IRA and the solo 401k. Now, the self-directed IRA is for anybody. Obviously, you have to have earned income in order to contribute to an IRA, but anybody who has an IRA can self-direct it. Okay, it's an IRA, whether it's with Vanguard or Fidelity, or whether it's self-directed. It's an IRA. The same rules apply from a contribution amount perspective, um, distributions, etc. Okay, it's an IRA. Now, on the flip side, you have the solo 401k. This is for the self-employed individuals and their spouse, primarily, hence the word solo. Bible says you and your spouse shall become one flesh. So you and your spouse are one when it comes to solo 401k. And I'll talk more about that as it relates to disqualified parties here in a few minutes as well. But the solo 401k is a different type of plan. It's a 401k, obviously, versus an IRA. So you must have self-employment activity to qualify for it. And passive income doesn't work. It needs to be earned income, like a real estate agent, for example, or an Uber driver. Those are just simple examples of being self-employed. You could be a consultant of any type, earning 1099 income, or just running your own business as an S Corp, C Corp. It doesn't matter. It all works for solo 401k. So let me break down the checkbook IRA first and how that works. First step is, well, talk to us, obviously. First step is setting up the new IRS approved custodian. Okay, so a custodian is like Vanguard, Fidelity. Those are examples of custodians. It's the custodian, not the IRS. Well, it's both, but it's more so the custodian who restricts on what can be invested. If your IRA is at one of the brokerages we all know, Schwab, for example, you're going to be restricted to what Schwab offers. stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and ETFs. When you open an account with an IRS approved custodian that allows for alternative assets, i.e., real estate, crypto, non Wall Street, non public assets, then that's where you have the self directed IRA with a different custodian. So once that happens, you'll set up a qualified transfer, and this will come from another retirement account. By the way, you don't have to transfer money in. Most people do because the IRA contribution limits annually are somewhat limited, but you don't have to. You can set up an IRA and fund it with anything as long as you have earned income to justify the contributions. But you can also transfer in traditional IRA money, Roth IRA money, 401k, 403b, Roth traditional, pretty much any qualified retirement account can go into an IRA. All right. Now, it's either Roth or traditional, it's not combined. You can set up two self directed IRAs, but you can't have Roth and traditional type funds inside one IRA. That does not work. It's two separate IRAs. Then what we do to give you checkbook control, because we have to bypass the custodian so that you can bypass the custodian when it comes to making investment decisions and opening accounts and such, we create a special purpose LLC. You're the manager of this LLC. Now, with that management level power, you'll open a bank account. We help you with this at Sense Financial. You open a bank account in the name of the LLC and its tax ID number. And so when that happens, the transfer will go from the current custodian or current retirement plan to the new custodian and then into that new checking account. Once that happens, which takes about 3 to 4 weeks altogether, then you will be ready to self-direct. Okay. Again, there's no minimums, there's no maximums. The IRS doesn't restrict how many IRA to IRA transfers or direct rollovers, 401ks to IRAs, IRAs to 401ks. There's no limit to either dollar amount or quantity. Okay. You can do as many of those as you want, as frequently as you like. No tax consequence. All right. Now, once that happens, everything's set up and you're ready to make the investment, then the income, the expenses for the investments come from that checking account, and the income from those investments go back into that checking account. So if it's a rental property, for example, the rent check money is going to flow into that checking account. If that rental property needs a new toilet and you got to pay a plumber to do it, the expense for that is coming from that checking account. Okay. This is a regular checking account. You can do online bill pay, debit card, wire transfer. You could write a check. It's just a regular checking account. It's actually technically a business checking account is what it is. All right. So that's the checkbook IRA. Now, on the other side, you have the solo 401k. All right. Now, I don't want to confuse people. Again, the IRA, anybody can do. The solo 401k requires self-employment activity. All right. Now, you do have to have a plan sponsored. That's your business, also known as the adopting business, because the adopting business is adopting what's called an adoption agreement. Okay. First off, do you qualify? You can have any type of business, sole proprietor, corporation, LLC, partnership, they all work. You just can't have full-time W-2 employees. Okay. You can't have any W-2s outside of the business owners and their spouses, because I said partnership, right? So you could have partners that are not married to each other. They can participate in one solo 401k plan, and so can their spouses. All right. So, but sole prop, corp, LLC, partnership, they all work. Now, once you determine you qualify, then you'll set up you'll come to us, we'll have a conversation, and our job is actually creating the adoption agreement and all the plan documents that go along with the solo 401k. Now, the solo 401k is a trust, and you are the trustee of the plan, which gives you the checkbook control. There's no custodian requirement by the IRS or per law for a solo 401k. So we don't have to bypass the custodian with the solo 401k to give you checkbook control like we do with the IRA. So there's no need for another special purpose LLC. We just add you, the plan owner, who's also the business owner, by the way, and the employee of that business, as the trustee. Okay. If it's a partnership, there's going to be co-trustees, married couple, both working for the same business, both participating in the same plan, typically are set up as co-trustees. So you have control of your separate funds to be able to invest them, okay, and make contributions. All right. Now, the with that trustee control, you open a bank account. All right. Now, same as with the IRA. It's just instead of the bank account being in the name of the LLC, it's actually in the name of the solo 401k, and it might be Brett solo 401k plan. All right, just as an example, it's going to have its own tax ID number as well. All right. Now, once that's set up, same thing as the IRA, you can roll existing funds into this plan, existing retirement funds, Roth 401k, Roth 403b, traditional IRA, traditional 401k. They can all go into the solo 401k. This is not a taxable event, it's a direct rollover. Now, the Roth IRA is the only type of retirement account or type of funds that cannot roll into a 401k. Once the Roth IRA, they're always Roth IRA. Why do I bring this up? Besides the obvious, because what a lot of people do is they have these 401ks from a former employer, and they have Roth funds and they have traditional funds, and they roll it all to an IRA. Okay. If that's you and you're listening to this and you're self employed or you're going to be self employed, don't do that, because once you roll the Roth 401k funds into a Roth IRA, they are stuck as an IRA. Those Roth 401k funds cannot move into the solo 401k that you potentially set up at a not too distant future. They're always going to be Roth IRA. All right. So do some research first, find out what you want to do before you roll the money out of that employer sponsored plan into a rollover IRA. All right. So the contribution limits for the solo 401k are very high. I don't have a slide here for the IRA, but I'll cover that later. Well, I'll just say it now, and then I'll show you on the slide later. For 2026, it's $7,500. Okay, for 2025, it was $7,000. If you're over 50, 8,000 for 2025. If you're over 50 for 2026, it's 8,600. Okay, that's for the IRA annual contribution limits per person. Okay, for all IRAs, by the way. So with the solo 401k though, it's literally 10 times the amount, $80,000 per year per participant if you're over 50. Okay, 72,000 if you're under 50. I'll talk about how the contributions work in a moment. Proverbs 21:20 says, "The wise man saves for the future, but the foolish man spends whatever he gets." So yes, we're talking about saving for your future. Retirement accounts are not money that you use tomorrow or to live on today for your retirement. 59 and a half is the year that you can take qualified distributions. Okay. That means no penalty. All right. That means tax free if it's Roth and it meets some other qualifications. It means earned income if it's traditional on whatever those distribution amounts are, but no penalties. Under 59 and a half, taxes and penalties. Okay. All right. Now that we've gotten the 401k kind of set up roughly high level and the IRA out of the way, I want to talk about two clients of ours, Thomas and Brandon Kennedy. Now, they are brothers. They also are business partners. They run a fix and flipping residential real estate business. Okay. One of them's a real estate agent. I think the other one might be, but I can't remember. And for one of them, for Brandon, actually, we did a checkbook IRA. For Thomas, we did a solo 401k. Now, they're both clients of ours, and they both use their money to do more fix and flips. So not only is there adopting business, a partnership, and as fix and flippers, but they also are using that knowledge they have in running a fix and flip business to actually do something very similar in their checkbook controlled retirement accounts. Now, they're not flipping as many properties inside the retirement plans as they could or as they do personally. First of all, they don't have the funds available. Second of all, they don't want to trigger what's called a UBIT tax, because when you're running an active business like flipping, the IRS is at some point going to decide that you're running an active business inside your retirement plan, and you can get away with a few, but after that, the IRA or 401k is going to have to pay that unrelated business income tax, which I may bring up the details of later. But that's their example. Almost everybody on the call can duplicate what they do. Maybe they're not fix and flippers, but you can relate to the fact that possibly you're a real estate agent or you are self-employed in some other capacity, and you want to use the self-directed account to apply the knowledge that you've learned in your self-employment or W-2 job, it doesn't really matter. Whatever knowledge you have that you bring to the table, you can apply to self-directing in your retirement account. Therefore, as I said at the very beginning of this, you're able to invest in what you know, control, and understand. Okay. And control the result as a result of being able to control what the investments go into. Okay. All right. So how do the contribution limits for the work for the 401k? Well, you basically have two. You're the employee and you're the employer. For 2026, it went up to 24,500. The catch up if you're 50 plus is 8,000. Now, this is the employee elective deferral. Okay. You can't double dip on this. So if you have a W-2 job, you have to figure out the math if you're contributing to that 401k plan or not. If you are, then you can do the difference on the employee deferral. This can be up to 100% of your self-employment earnings. And if you're S Corp, C Corp, and you're running payroll, it's all done through payroll. And the contributions are based on the W-2. And when you process them, the employee contributions, it's done through payroll. And then the actual money needs to flow into the 401k, the solo 401k, as soon as possible. We like to typically within 7 days, although there's some different schools of thought on that, but as soon as possible. These can be pre-tax or Roth. And you also have, because you're the employer, the IRS allows you to do what's called profit sharing. This isn't a match, it's a percentage of the income from the business. 25% of the W-2, or for sole prop, single member LLC filing a sole prop, Schedule C, basically, it's 20% of the profit of the company. All right. Now, if you're under 50 for 2026, I mentioned it's 72,000. There is a catch up if you're between 50 and 64 plus. Actually, it's between 50 and 60. No, 50 and 59. Excuse me. It's $80,000 because the IRS allows what's called a super catch up between in the years that you turn 60, 61, 62, and 63, and your total contributions actually go up to 83,250. So I don't know why they chose those 3 years, but they did. And then for 2025, it's 70,000 or 77,500, including the catch up. And then 2025 still has that super catch up. So it would go up to 81,250 for 2025. All right. So I have this on the slide and all these numbers because I just threw out a lot of numbers and I want people to be able to visually see it. So I'm going to change the slide in a moment as you kind of digest what I said. But we are going to give some time for Q&A at the end here. So if you're here and you have questions, write them down or just submit them in the chat. And that's how we'll get to them. We'll read them in the chat. Now you can use leverage, right? Which is super cool. When's the last time somebody offered to loan you money to buy more S&P 500? You can, there's probably some ways to do that with, what's it called? Not options, margin, but most of us are not doing that. However, a lot of us are familiar with getting a mortgage on a property. So you can do the same thing in your retirement account. It's got to be non-recourse. The property is the only security for the loan. You cannot personally guarantee the loan. Okay. So your credit, your income is not relevant to this like any other type of loan that you would do. This is a true non-recourse loan. It is DSCR in nature in the sense that it's debt service coverage ratio related, but it goes one step further from a regular DSCR loan in that what I just said, you are not personally guaranteeing this loan. Your income, your credit is not a factor at all. The property, therefore, needs to cash flow. You need to have about 6 months of reserves. And in an IRA, this will trigger unrelated business income tax. The solo 401k is exempt from that tax. So if you're going to self-direct retirement into real estate, and you know for sure that you're going to use leverage, the solo 401k is a better vehicle than an IRA for that. Just as a general rule, doesn't mean not to invest in real estate with your IRA and use leverage. Just understand what the tax looks like. And then we do have a list of non-recourse lenders on our website there at SenseFinancial.com /non-recourse-lenders. All right, let's talk about disallowed investments. Well, what's disallowed is there's disqualified parties and prohibited transactions. Um, transacting with disqualified parties is a form of a prohibited transaction. What's not allowed is life insurance and in an IRA and collectibles in both plans. Okay, so wine collections, antiques, art, baseball cards, stamps, coins that aren't qualified, precious metals, those are not allowed. Okay. So again, I said at the beginning, the IRS tells you what you can't invest in. Okay. Not what you can invest in. The other thing they tell you is who is disqualified. And it's basically you and your immediate family, the lineal descents. You, your spouse, your parents and grandparents, your children, and their spouses are all disqualified parties. What does that mean? It means the plan, the retirement account, cannot transact with any of those people. It means that you should ask this question before doing an investment. Am I or any other disqualified person going to indirectly or directly benefit from this transaction? If the answer is yes, we highly recommend you just stay away from it. Everything should be arm's length. All services provided should be arm's length. Let me restate that. All blue collar services provided should be arm's length. Okay. White collar is okay. You can spend some time on your computer. You can drive up and down streets looking for a property for your IRA to purchase. The white collar type work is okay. It's the blue collar work that's not. You can't swing a hammer for a property that your IRA owns. Your daughter, who's away at college, can't live in a property that your 401k owns while she's going to college. She's a disqualified person. Again, am I or any other disqualified person going to directly or indirectly benefit from this transaction or from something this IRA is doing or investing in or owns? The answer is yes. It's not going to work. Okay. Just stay away from it. All right. Okay. Now, here's one of the final slides. The traditional IRA, the self-directed IRA versus the checkbook IRA LLC versus the solo 401k. Now, I didn't really talk about the self-directed IRA. Basically, this is what's called a basic self-directed IRA, where you don't actually have what we call checkbook control. So basically, that's the column on the far left there where it says SD IRA. Now, they're still self-directed, but you're going through the custodian for everything. So because of that, there's going to be transaction fees, there's going to be per asset fees, and there's going to be red tape in making your investments. If you're going to do an investment a year and there's not going to be multiple transactions related to that investment, do the regular IRA. Okay, it's fine, the self-directed IRA. If you want more control, then move over to the IRA, the checkbook IRA. Okay, now there's no transaction fees. There are LLC fees, so depending on the state the LLC is filed in, okay, that's going to determine what that looks like. The contributions are the same for any IRA, as I mentioned, but with the checkbook IRA, you are bypassing the custodian, no red tape, no transaction fees, no per asset fees. Okay, and so it's a much more efficient way to invest, especially if you're going to be doing private lending or owning rental properties where you're having monthly transactions. Having the checkbook IRA that you control is going to be a lot easier than going through a custodian for everything. Okay, we don't do the self-directed IRA, the basic self-directed IRA at Sense Financial. We only do checkbook control. And then on the other side, I should say, you have the solo 401k. Now, of course, both of those last two have checkbook control, no transaction fees. One has LLC, one doesn't. The solo 401k, one thing I forgot to mention is that it does have a participant loan option where you can borrow up to 50,000 or 50% of the participant's plan value. And so it's up to 50%, not to exceed 50,000. And you can use that money for whatever you want. You're going to pay it back prime plus 1% over a 5-year amortization period, no prepayment penalty. But that's another benefit to the solo 401k that the IRA does not have. The max contribution, of course, is 10 times almost. It's way more. And then that is pretty much it. Oh, and then of course the solo 401k has Roth and traditional built into the same plan, and you do have to be self-employed to qualify for that. All right, now we're at the point of handling some questions. So let's see. We go back here, see if there are any questions. It doesn't look like anybody's put any into the chat. So if you have any, feel free to type them into the chat now, and we will certainly get to them. By the way, there is another change to the catch-up contribution on the solo 401k. If you make if you're a W-2 employee, so this only applies for S corp, C corp. If you're a W-2 employee and you're making more than $150,000 of W-2, then your catch-up contributions for the solo 401k, this is that 8,000 number, have to be Roth. Okay, that's if you pay yourself a W-2 of that much. So it's pretty easy to stay under that amount, but most people won't mind doing that amount in Roth as well. So basically, they just don't want you to get a tax deduction. They do not allow you to get a tax deduction if you're making 150 or more. Does a self-directed, Teresa is asking, does a self-directed cause a red flag with IRS versus a custodian self-directed? I think you're asking about checkbook control versus no checkbook control. No red flags. No red flags. The IRA LLC setup has been around since 1996, and it's been highly scrutinized in court by the IRS, and it's always stood up as not being a prohibited transaction or an issue with the setup, which essentially would be a prohibited transaction. So no red flags. No red flags. Now, with great responsibility, with great freedom comes great responsibility. So with the checkbook control, even without the checkbook control, honestly, because the custodian is going to really largely do what you tell them. It's not necessarily a second set of eyes on, is this a good investment? Is this not a good investment? Is this a prohibited transaction? Now, don't get me wrong. If you request for the custodian to sign a purchase agreement, and the seller has your same last name, they're probably going to ask a question or two, right? Who is this seller? Are they related to you? But outside of that, the custodian's largely just going to do what you tell them to do. Just take that over to the checkbook control. And if everything is arm's length from you and your immediate family, you really have nothing to worry about. Now, you should vet the deals accordingly, vet the investments accordingly, make good decisions. You're the fiduciary of the plan. You're responsible for investing. You're responsible for investing wisely and aggressively. It's not your money until you take a distribution. It is somebody else's money. Treat it like it's my money. It doesn't matter. It's literally not your money. It's somebody else's money that you're managing. You're a steward. Okay. Be a good steward. All right. Thank you for the question, Teresa. Kevin is asking, if you own your own LLC, that is the management company of rental property, and the tenants pay the PM LLC, what would the expected transactions revenue look like in the solo 401k account? All rents and all expenses, or just net amounts after expenses? Okay, I need to read that again. If you own your own LLC. Okay, so Kevin, if you own your own LLC, this is not part of the IRA. So this is a personal LLC. That is the management company of a rental property, and the tenant wants to pay the property management LLC. Transactions revenue look like in the solo 401k account? Well, okay, so you can, if the adopting business, and feel free to clarify, if the adopting business is a property management company you have, whether it's LLC, sole proprietor, by itself, it doesn't really matter. All the contributions are going to be based on the profit of the company, right? So up to 24,500 on the elective deferral, and then another 20% of whatever the net profit is as profit sharing. So most people who are managing their own rentals, or they have, what's kind of throwing me off is you're saying the tenants pay the property management LLC. I mean, I guess they kind of indirectly do that anyway because they're paying the rent, right? Is that what you mean? I'm a little confused by that. But whatever the income is going to dictate how much contribution you can make. And most people managing their own rentals don't have a portfolio large enough to maximize the solo 401k contributions if that's the only type of income there is. All right. Hopefully that answers your question. All right, I'll give it a couple more minutes here, and then we'll wrap it up if no more. Oh, okay, solo 401k LLC versus PM LLC. So I misunderstood that you need to have both. Maybe I misunderstood that you need to have both. Well, the solo 401k doesn't need an LLC, period. Your adopting business is whatever your adopting business is. That's up to you and your tax advisor. You don't need an LLC to have a solo 401k, whether it's your business or whether it's the solo 401k itself. There's no LLC required in either case. But you could, like if you have a property management company that's set up as an LLC, then which I'm not sure why you would do, by the way. I'm not an asset protection attorney, but if you're just managing your own rentals, I'm not sure you really need an LLC for managing those. The properties could of course be inside of an LLC, but that's a separate conversation. So, but yeah, thanks for the question, Kevin. Maybe I didn't do a good job of explaining earlier about the setup and the way the contributions work. So. All right. Well, with that said, we're going to wrap this up. Thank you, everybody who was here today. If you do want to jump on my calendar, then feel free to grab a spot at SenseFinancial.com/consultation. We'll hop on a call. There's a Zoom option or a phone call option. It's totally up to you. And we'll have a conversation about your situation, whether what we do applies or is a good fit for you or not is totally fine either way. But yeah, you'll walk away with some information you didn't have before, and we would love to have that chat. All right. Thank you, everybody. Oh, wait, hold on. I got a new question from Kevin. Hold on. Okay, my property management LLCs manages multiple properties, but only one may be in the solo 401k. Is there any special way needed to identify revenue expenses between properties in the solo 401k? Well, first off, you're a disqualified party to your solo 401k. So you can't have a property management company that manages a property that is owned by your solo 401k. That would be a prohibited transaction. You can't provide that kind of service. You can't provide services to the 401k or to the IRA. Okay. Is there some ways you could maybe manage it without violating the prohibited transaction rules? Possibly, but we don't recommend it. So that's thing number one. Is there any special way needed to identify revenue? Is there any special way needed to identify revenue and expenses between properties and the solo 401k? Well, they're separate. But again, if you just keep everything arm's length, this question doesn't exist. It doesn't work. Correct. Yes. If a property is purchased in a solo 401k, a separate property management company needs to manage it. Yes, that is what we highly recommend. It's not only what we highly recommend, you can't manage it yourself, especially with a company that you have set up. If it's just one property and you're buying it and you're not doing like property management over here as a business, then technically you could manage the property, but there's services you just can't provide. Like you shouldn't go take pictures for the listing. You shouldn't really open the door for prospective tenants to walk through it. That's providing services, right? You probably shouldn't do stuff like that. So our take here at Sense Financial is a conservative one, I will admit. So we suggest and highly recommend that you have a third-party management company. All right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. With that said, we will wrap it up, and I hope to talk to you all at some point. And have a great day and a great weekend. All right. Take care.